So let's say you're going for the June or July LSATs 2 to 3 months out. If you are working or in school, like I said, you're doing maybe one-timed exam on the weekend and then lighter studying during the week. I'd recommend typically 10 to 20 hours per week for those of you who have other obligations. And that's reasonable. That's enough. Don't feel like you have to burn yourself out. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And that is especially true for those of you who are not working or in school, those of you who are fortunate enough to be studying full time. So if you're in that situation, you run into the opposite problem. You're not in the situation where you have to carve out time before work, during lunch, or after work. If you are studying full time, you really do run the risk of burnout. And so in that case, what I want to do is I want to make sure that you're orienting everything else in your life around your LSAT prep, but you're still carving out time for what you need. So maybe you wake up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, you shower, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, work out. Then you study maybe from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m., take a break for lunch, then study again from 1 to 4 or 1 to 4:30. That is enough. That's 6 to 6.5 hours of studying. That is more than enough. Any more than that would lead to burnout, especially over a 2 to 3 month period. So carve out time for socializing, relaxing, eating well, exercising. You have time to do all of that, but relaxing in the evenings. On the other hand, if you're working or in school, then maybe get to work an hour early, carve out some time in a conference room or at your desk before everyone else shows up, and do a time section or two, or read some articles or do some other practice problems. Then during lunch, maybe you find a half hour or an hour, or maybe if you have some downtime at work, you read some articles on my site, you watch some videos, or on your commute even, listen to some podcasts. I've got 2 podcasts, the LSAT Unplugged podcast and the LSAT Pros podcast with my buddy Graham Blake. And so definitely check those out. They're in iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and so on. And they're a good way to fit in some LSAT content studying, even passively, while you're on the go. Now, no matter what your situation is, I want you to take this exam seriously. I want you to treat it as if it were a 6-credit class or as if it were a part-time job. It's serious, and I find that a lot of times people get discouraged because they don't really realize just how grueling this exam is. For so many of us, myself included, this exam ended up being a lot more than we expected. You know, like many of you, I thought I'd be able to do it in 2 to 3 months and be done with it, especially because I was good at school stuff. I was good at academics. And I thought that I was going to rock this exam. But then, lo and behold, I took my first diagnostic and I got a 152. And I was incredibly discouraged because I had gone to a top undergrad. I thought I was going to go to a top 14 law school. And then that was a really rude awakening to score right around the median. And so it took me a long time, much more than 2 to 3 months. It actually took me a full year of studying this exam, doing every single LSAT released, every single book I could find, even over the course of an entire year before I got my 175. And so this was a lot more than I bargained for. It's a lot tougher than the GRE or the GMAT or the MCAT or even the SAT, because like I said, this is not an exam of content. You can't cram it. You can't memorize it. It's a test of a way of thinking, and it really does require a massive mindset shift, a kind of transformation in your way of thinking, to be critical and skeptical, to not simply take things at face value. And so if it's taken you more than 2 to 3 months, you're not alone. I recommend for most people, they take at least 5 to 6 months. This exam is worth it. If you think about it, your undergraduate GPA took you 3 to 4 years or more to get to, but the LSAT is weighed more heavily than that in the admission process. Yet it all comes down to one day, to 2.5 to 3. And so it really is worth that investment of 5 to 6 months. And I find that the people who tend to do best on this exam do give it at least 5 to 6 months, and they do at least register for 2 or 3 LSAT test dates over a longer period of time. So if you've taken it and didn't get what you wanted, you're definitely not alone. Pretty much everybody who came to my meetup last night in Brooklyn, there were like 10 or so people there, every single one of them was retaking the LSAT. It was nobody's first go at this. Everyone had at least taken the exam once or twice. And I can see from my email list, I can see that people have been on my list for 3, 4, 5 years or more, continuing to study for this exam, especially if you're working or you're in school or you have a family. those other obligations, they really can eat up a lot of time. And so if they've required you to postpone your test date or to withdraw or delay, that is the norm. It's becoming more common than ever, especially since law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. There really is little reason not to retake if you think you could do better. And law school admissions is conducted on a rolling basis. And so you can always take it again and apply later in the cycle. I know I said earlier that you don't necessarily want to apply at the end of the cycle, and that's true. But at the same time, law schools are keeping applications open for longer and longer periods to see who else comes along. And so if you do apply at the end of the cycle or you do have a longer timeline, that's perfectly okay and normal. And so to help you structure your studying, I've got some LSAT study schedules here. I'm going to link for you in the description for this episode here in the chat. If you want, I've got week by week ones, I've got day by day ones to help you orient your study for any study timeline from 1 month through 7 months. And I've also got retake schedules as well.